G'day, Starlo here, and I'm out on the water again for another one of my Tuesday YAK chats. And as always, it's brought to you by CM Partners Accounting. Now, it's almost the end of the financial year, and that means tax time, which is a pretty good time to be thinking about whether or not you've got good advice from an accountancy firm. If you're not happy with the ones that you're using at the moment, or you haven't got one, check out CM Partners Accounting. If you use my link in the details down below, they'll give you a free, no strings attached consultation to talk about your accounting needs and doing that dreaded tax return. Anyway, I'm not out here to think about the books or accounting or tax or anything else. I'm out here to have a fish, and I'm actually going to have a bit of a troll from the kayak today and see if I can catch a flathead for my dinner. It's getting very cold. Even now, mid-afternoon, mid to late afternoon, it's still only about 13 or 14 degrees. It started out at about 4 degrees this morning, and I can tell you, that water is cold. I don't know how active the flathead are going to be, but I'm going to troll one of Ray Broughton's little deep divers along and see if I can catch a flathead, take it home and have it for dinner if it's a legal size. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about today, about eating fish, what I sometimes jokingly refer to as the kill and grill aspect of fishing. And I think it's probably an overlooked and underrated part of fishing. It's a reason that a lot of us go fishing, is to catch something to eat. Now, I've let a lot more fish go over the years than I've kept, but I've also kept plenty as well. I love eating fresh fish, and so does the rest of the family. So I regularly bring fish home, and I think that we need to celebrate that part of fishing. I mean, I know that there are plenty of people out there who fish who don't eat fish, and that's fine. There are people with seafood allergies, and there are people who just don't like fish. I can understand that, and you don't have to keep fish. But I do think that keeping the occasional feed of fish is one of the things that we need to defend and preserve as part of our sport. It's one of the things that's going to give us some justification to be able to keep doing it into the future, because justifying fishing just for catch and release is a little bit harder than justifying it to bring something home to eat. But I didn't want to just talk about the ethics of keeping the occasional feed of fish. I also wanted to talk about our attitudes towards the fish that we eat. People's favourites and not so favourites, A-listers and B-listers in the fishing species list. But first of all, I better get this lure out and set up a trolling run, and then I can have a proper talk to you. Need to find a little bit of deeper water. It's a bit shallow here. I'm going to head out here to the drop-off. First thing I need to do is make sure this lure swims well and swims straight, and of course I know that Ray would have tuned it. Yeah, it's swimming like an absolute beauty. This is a bit of an experimental one of his. I think he did a bit of a production run of these. It's basically like the Bimmy body but with a big bib to get it well down. I'll be interested to see how deep it does run. I reckon it'll go at least 2.5, maybe 3 metres deep if I let it far enough out on this fine braid. The tide is absolutely pouring out at the moment. I'm pushing into it, and I'm having to pedal reasonably hard just to make ground. Run out tide's good for flatties. I actually prefer it. I like the last half of the run out and maybe the first hour of the run in. That's when I've caught more and bigger flathead than at other times, but you can catch flatties right through the tidal cycle. It's still too shallow here to put this deep diver out. I'll keep pushing on. Okay, we're getting out into a bit of depth now. I can't quite see the bottom anymore, and I can see from the darkness of the water that it's deepening up even more over this way. So I'll plop that lure out. I won't put it out very far because I think it'll hit the bottom even in this depth. And I'll just hand hold it for a bit. That way I can feel what's going on. Wow, that tide is really pushing. I'm going to have to pedal a bit harder to make ground. Yeah, so I was talking about eating fish and people's tastes in fish, and they really vary. And the thing we've got to understand about taste is but it's highly subjective. There's no real right and wrong, whether it's your taste in art or music or football codes. Everyone's got their own opinion and what they prefer, and that's fine. That's what makes us individuals. But it's wrong when we start telling other people that they haven't got it right and that we've got all the answers. I saw a post recently on social media talking about whiting, King George whiting and yellowfin whiting, and someone came on and categorically stated, oh, yellowfin whiting are a lot better to eat than King George whiting. And of course there were people that argued the opposite, and you know, there's no right or wrong in that argument. You might prefer yellowfin whiting or you might prefer King George whiting. That's completely up to you. I love eating flathead. My absolute favourite eating fish is the West Australian jewfish, something I haven't had for a few years. Absolutely beautiful fish to eat, in my opinion. And I think that's what you've got to always add when you make those statements about the taste of fish, in my opinion. And we're all entitled to our opinions, but it doesn't make us right or wrong. It's interesting to look at A grade, B grade, C grade fish and look at what it is that differentiates them in the minds of many people. And I think a lot of it, for me anyway, actually comes down to texture. I've never been a big fan of soft or moist fish, and for that reason I don't really eat a lot of bream. I'll eat the occasional nice clean silvery bream that I catch off the beach or the rocks, but they're just a little bit soft and moist for me. I'd much rather a bit of flathead or a bit of whiting, even a bit of silver trevally. Seriously, there's nothing wrong with silver trevally, especially if you look after them. And I think that's a big part of the message too. What you do with fish from the moment that you land them until the moment that you eat them is a really important part of the equation. I've come into shallow water again here, and that lure's shoveling the bottom. So I'm going to bring it in and move back out and find the channel. Okay, I've definitely found a bit of deeper water. Time to get the lure back out there and try and catch that flatty that I'm looking for my dinner. I still won't put it a heck of a long way out. Oh, a chilly little southerly has sprung up while I was looking for this deeper water. I don't think I'll be staying out here too long. The temperature's dropping again already. Hopefully long enough to get a fish. Anyway, as I was saying, one of the really critical things about the flavour and texture and taste of fish, I reckon, is what you do with them between landing them and serving them up on the plate. And to me, that means killing the fish as promptly as possible, preferably by brain spiking it, what's called ikijimi. It's a Japanese technique of brain spiking the fish and bleeding it immediately, cutting the gill arches, the throat latch area, and draining as much blood out of the fish as you can. And then pulling its temperature down, particularly in summer. It's less critical at this time of the year, but when the weather's really warm, you need to chill that fish as quickly as possible and keep it cold. And the ideal way to do that is to drop it into a slurry of ice and seawater. That's by far the best way to keep your fish while you're still out fishing. I love those insulated bags. Shimano just brought one out and I've been using it and it's absolutely fantastic, but there are quite a few of them on the market. You can use an insulated cooler too, a hard cooler, but those soft bags are really great and they keep ice for quite a long time. And that's how I prefer to store my fish while I'm on the water, out in the boat or whatever. If I'm walking or on the bank, it's a little bit harder, but I still try and keep them as cool as possible. Might just mean putting them in a hessian bag, a wet hessian bag, and letting the breeze blow through it. So keep the fish cool, then clean and process it as soon as possible. If you're going to fillet it and skin it or whatever, get the guts out as quickly as you possibly can, whatever you're going to do with it, because it's the stuff in the stomach deteriorating that really starts that process of bacteria breeding up and the decomposition of the fish. Do all that stuff and then preferably don't freeze the fish. I used to try not to freeze fish if I could possibly avoid it, and I still do, but I do freeze fish and I vacuum seal them. I cryovac them usually if I am going to freeze them. You can keep them fresh, you know, in the fridge for easily for 4 or 5 or 6 days. You keep them down around that 4 or 5 degrees Celsius mark. They'll last in the fridge, no problems at all. In fact, I reckon some fish actually improve from a little bit of time in the fridge. And some fish, believe it or not, actually improve from being frozen. Some of the sharks and rays are a classic example of that. Shovel nose and even gummies. I reckon they're better if they've been frozen for a little while. But again, these are just my opinions. It doesn't mean I'm right, and you're certainly within your rights to disagree with me. As I said, that's what taste is all about. But if you look at the real top A grade of fish, and I mentioned WA jewfish before, and things like snapper, and people will argue till the cows come home about snapper. Some reckon they're really great to eat, others reckon they're pretty average. I put them about middle of the pack. I don't mind a bit of snapper. But all of those high value fish are fish that tend to keep really well. You can freeze them for weeks or months, thaw them out, and they're pretty much the same as when you put them in the freezer. Other softer fish, things like tailor or the blue salmon that you get up north, you freeze those, they go really soft and mushy. Bonito, classic example. Really fresh bonito, looked after, killed, chilled, eaten that night, cooked, just cooked through. It's not too much better. But you throw that same bonito in the fish box and dump some other fish on top of it and don't gut it, then knock the fillets off it and put them in the fridge or freeze them and then take them out and cook them up, and it's just mush. And that's why people reckon it's only fit for burley or dog food. It's because they've never had it really looked after. Those things make a huge difference. I'll tell you the other thing that makes a big difference when it comes to eating any seafood, perhaps any food in fact, and that's context. The place, the time, the company that you're with when you eat it, all of those things can have a really big impact on the whole experience of eating a fish or anything else. I'll tell you a little story. I used to fish a spot over on the Great Australian Bight. I went there several times with Peter Woods and his mates from WA, and we'd climb down these massive cliffs onto this beach. You may have seen an episode of the show that Bushy and I did, Hooked on Adventure, and I think we also did an episode on it for the Rex Hunt show. And Bushy decided not to climb down, probably pretty smart, because the gear we were climbing on was very sus, to put it mildly. But anyway, I climbed down there quite a few times, and the fishing was just amazing. Australian salmon, we just caught them hand over fist, and some pretty big bronze whaler sharks that came in and started hammering the salmon as well. But Australian salmon, they're one of those fish that most people reckon they're pretty average. Some reckon they're absolutely disgusting. A few people like me don't mind eating the smaller ones in particular, if you cut all the bloodline out of them and, again, look after them. I don't mind salmon. There's a lot better fish to eat, in my opinion. But anyway, we'd kept about half a dozen salmon. We were camped at the top of the cliff, and we were going to cook them up for dinner that night. And there was an old flying fox set up there with a pulley on an arm out over the cliff and a wire cable going down to a basket. We were using that to raise and lower our gear. And at the end of the session, we piled the half a dozen salmon that we were going to keep into the basket. We all climbed out, which was quite an effort, got to the top and hooked up one of the four-wheel drives to the cable and started driving it through the bush to pull the salmon up. And my job was to be on the edge of the cliff, grab the basket when it came up, bring it in and tip the salmon out. Anyway, it got at least 3/4 of the way up, and that rusty old cable snapped out at the four-wheel drive. It's nearly dark, I should add, by this stage, darker than it is here now. And the cable snapped. I heard it let go. And that basket started to drop, and the pulley it was squeaking and rattling. And what I heard next was the end of that broken cable coming through the scrub, scything from side to side like a big angry snake, actually cutting down small saplings as this thing accelerated towards the beach below. And I hit the dirt. I just flattened out, and that cable, the end of it, I don't know if it went over the top of me or not, but it came pretty close to me as it cut its way through the bush. And then there was just this eerie silence, punctuated by the little rusty wheel in the pulley going as it was spinning after the wire had gone through it. It was quite a moment. But our salmon were back down on the beach, and it was nearly dark, and we had nothing else for dinner. So the youngest member of the crew drew the short straw, and he had to climb all the way back down, put the salmon in a backpack and climb out, and it was completely dark by the time he got out. Well, we filleted those salmon up, cut the bloodlines out of them, skinned them, and we fired up the fry pan, put a huge dollop of butter in it, sliced up the salmon into small pieces and chucked it in there, dusted it in flour first, threw it in the butter, cooked it just through, pulled it out, and I've got to tell you, it was one of the best meals of fish I've ever eaten. But it's about context and company, and the memories that that meal evokes are at least as important as the quality of the fish that I was eating. And I think we need to remember that when we get into these arguments. You know, while we in the first world argue the nuances in flavour between a yellowfin whiting and a King George whiting, most of the rest of the world are living on tilapia, carp, sardines, mullet, fish like that, all perfectly good to eat, and they've got exactly the same nutritional value. Some of them have probably got higher nutritional value because of their oil content than those fish that we're arguing about. So don't get all bent out of shape arguing about which is the best eating fish. Often the best eating fish is the one that you've got in your bucket, that you've looked after, that you bring home, that you prepare well and cook for your family, and learn how to prepare fish. A lot of people overcook fish. I love sashimi, raw fish. I love ceviche, marinated fish, or numus, whatever you want to call it, which is the Indonesian version of marinated fish. All those different ways of preparing fish. We need to celebrate and enjoy the fish that we catch. It's such an honour to be able to go out and self-harvest seafood. We should never take it for granted, and we should never lightly allow that right to be taken away from us, because it's one of the things that's going to allow us to keep fishing into the future. Perceptions and preconceived notions also come into the whole fish taste thing. If people are told that a particular fish is not good to eat, they'll often just adopt that attitude whether they've tried it or not. One of the ones that I get into arguments about sometimes is mowong, the rubber-lipped or grey mowong that we catch down here in southern waters quite frequently when we're targeting snapper. My wife Jo and I actually prefer mowong to snapper when it comes to eating, and you tell people that and some of them just shake their heads. They go, oh, they've got a really strong iodine flavour, they're awful. And you say to them, well, what, the last one that you ate tasted like that? Oh, I've never eaten them. My mate told me, blah, 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 blah. And my mate told me is not quite the same as filleting, skinning and cooking one up and trying it for yourself. You might be pleasantly surprised. Apparently in some places and at certain times of the year they can have an iodine flavour, but I've certainly never encountered it. We really like them. They're just that little bit firmer and not quite as moist as a snapper, and for that reason I marginally prefer them. But again, it's just my opinion. Doesn't mean it's right. Well, I'm still waiting for my flathead, and I might get it before it gets dark or before I get too cold. But that's about it from me for this week. I hope you've enjoyed this Tuesday Yak Chat, and I hope you're enjoying the series. Make sure you check back over previous ones and my original Tuesday chats that weren't done from the Yak. I did them in the studio. There's some interesting topics in some of those. I'd love to hear your opinions. I'd also love to hear subjects that you'd like to see me tackle in future Tuesday Yak Chats. Just comment down below. Now, I know some of you are listening to this as a podcast. Some of you are watching it as a video. It's available both ways through all the usual streaming services and, of course, on YouTube. And don't forget that it's brought to you by CM Partners Accounting. And please make contact with them, have a chat to them about your accounting needs, and tell them that Starlo sent you. This lure's swimming really well. It hasn't picked up weed or anything, but it also hasn't picked up a fish. I'll let you know if I caught one. But until next Tuesday, this is Starlo wishing you tight lines.